Hi, my name is Iris, and today I'd like to share with you what the Lord has placed in my heart concerning the book of James, chapter 3. A few tidbits about the book of James. It is dated in 44 AD, one of the earliest accounts of all the books in the New Testament. In John chapter 7, verse 5, we read that early in Jesus' ministry, his siblings didn't believe in him. In Acts 15, James spoke up in defense of Paul, who was spreading the gospel to the Gentiles. He was part of the Jerusalem Council. That means that after Jesus' death and resurrection, James became a fierce defender of the Great Commission. Let's dig into James chapter 3, verses 5 through 12. These verses describe the tongue as an untamable evil with which we bless or curse. Verse 6 says, "The tongue is a fire, a world of unrighteousness." Where else in the Bible do we read about the tongue being referred to as a fire? Well, let's go to Acts chapter 2, verses 3 to 4. It is the day of Pentecost, and it says, "Divided tongues as a fire appeared to them," the disciples, "and rested on each one of them. And they were all filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other tongues as the Spirit gave them utterance." The flaming tongue. The rest of verse 6 says, "The tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body, setting on fire the course of life, and set on fire by hell." Sin began in the spiritual world. The enemy disrupted all God's creation, both in heaven and on earth. He maximized on the following opportunity in his attempt to destroy it. Remember the law or the command that God gave to Adam? He gave it to him before he made woman. And it was something Adam shared with her because she recited this law to the serpent. The enemy tempted Adam and Eve to disobey God with his words. The result of this disobedience is that we are all born into sin. The next part of verse 6 in James chapter 3 says, "Setting on fire the entire course of life, and set on fire by hell." I like the way Paul expounds on the part of verse 6 that says, "The tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body." In the book of Romans chapter 7, verses 21 to 23, it says, "So I find it to be a law that when I want to do right, evil lies close at hand. For I delight in the law of God in my inner being, but I see in my members another law waging war against the law of my mind and making me captive to the law of sin that dwells in my members." Consider perhaps that connection between what Paul says in Romans, what James says in verse 6, and what we know about the temptation of Adam and Eve. So I mentioned the flaming tongue. But let's consider a time in the Bible where we read about a failing tongue. The failing tongue of Moses. The story I'm referring to is found in Exodus 3, verses 1 and 2. The scene, the burning bush. A symbol of the power of God in the form of a fire that did not consume. We can divulge so much from this exchange between God and Moses. At least 5 times, Moses tells God that he can't do what is being asked of him. He says things like, "The people won't listen to me. I don't know enough about you, God. I don't even know your name." Finally, Moses says in verse 10, "Oh my Lord, I am not eloquent either in the past or since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and of tongue." And I just love the Lord's response in verses 11 and 12. He says, "Who has made man's mouth? Who makes him mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be your mouth with your mouth and teach you what you shall say, what you shall speak." Let's think about the use of our tongues. Are we being intentional about checking ourselves and asking the Lord to use our tongues to bless others? There are many ways we use our words today. We type them in text or email. My mother used to use the proverbial head nod to tell me what to do, like that. How often do we depend on the Lord for words to speak? Luke 6:45 says, the good person out of the good treasure of his heart produces good. And the evil person out of his evil treasure produces evil. For out of the abundance of the heart, his mouth speaks. Our words reflect what is truly in our hearts. Our words actually expose our hearts. Recently, I saw many people on social media cheering on some very hurtful jokes about people from other countries, specifically about the virus that we are all enduring. The crowd roared with laughter and applaud. There was applause for the jokes. Many people were hurt badly by them. Are we using our words to bless or to curse? There are many times I have failed and continue to fail in this area. I have said things without thinking. I have not considered my state of emotions when responding to someone. And I end up taking it to a level I didn't mean for the dialogue to go. I have to go to God continuously to account for the words that I have spoken that cursed instead of blessed. We often need to assess what words we are using. Will you use your words to bless or to curse? I pray we all go to God for guidance in this area. I pray the Lord will teach us all what we should say. If we all take inventory of what comes out of our mouths, I'm sure we can think of times where we failed in our speech. The Lord has a word for us. He has a plan and a purpose for us to bring his message of truth and of hope and of love and of life to those around us. I pray he will give us words to speak that will build up, restore, and encourage. Thank you.